next we have to see, the next category of commercial bank we have to see is Regional Rural Bank, RRB. There are about 56 regional rural banks as on 31/3/2016. And what was the necessity of having to start one more category of bank called Regional Rural Bank? You can look at the name itself and find the answer. Sometimes the names are indicative. Regional, it caters to a particular region. It is a rural bank, that's why it's called a regional. It doesn't have an all India quality or all India character. It focuses on a particular region, and it does not, even in that region, if there are cities, it omits them, it goes to the rural areas. It is a semi-urban and rural area focused bank operating in a small area. What was the necessity to start Regional Rural Bank? Regional rural banks were started in the year 1975 under an act called Regional Rural Bank Act. What was the purpose of creating regional rural banks? At that point of time, in 1975, we had only old private sector banks operating in India, which were very small, and then nationalized banks, and then State Bank of India and its group. This nationalized bank and State Bank of India group, they had a lion's share of banks business, and they were having an all India character. They were not able to cater to the local needs of a farmer, a poor artisan, because the banks were too big. And the people in the bank, they were transferred in an all India basis. Somebody from Punjab is asked to work in somewhere in deep interior Tamil Nadu. And the man who comes from Punjab, he does not know Tamil. And the people who are here, they don't know Punjabi. As a result, people are not able to communicate to the bank manager. So they had to start a new bank which had the feel and familiarity of a cooperative bank, and at the same time it should function with the business sense of a commercial bank. So these two combination, it should have the feel and familiarity of a cooperative bank and the functional efficiency and business sense of a commercial bank, and it should serve a local area. So with that in mind, they started an act called Regional Rural Bank Act, by which new regional rural banks were formed. How they were formed? Every regional rural bank has a sponsor, which is either a public sector bank. The sponsor sponsors a regional rural bank. So every bank sponsored one or two or more regional rural banks. The capital of the regional rural bank was contributed by the government of India, the concerned state government, and then the sponsor bank in the ratio of 50%, 15% and 35%. Central government 50%, state government 15%, the sponsoring bank 35%. They may ask a question on this. What is the percentage of shareholding of sponsor bank in a regional rural bank? The answer is 35%. And in 2000, a lot of regional rural banks were started. They were sponsored, they were started, but most of them went into red. Because the commercial banks, the nationalized banks, they started the regional rural banks in their own semblance, in their own sick semblance, and what were all the ills that were plaguing the public sector banks started plaguing the regional rural banks also, because it was almost a kind of a carbon copy with a little bit of changes here and there. Therefore, many of the banks went into red. But a few banks came out successfully. In 2000, something around, they say 996 branches were there. Now, then, because of the continued loss in many of the regional rural banks, the Reserve Bank of India started a consolidation phase, and they started consolidating banks, regional rural banks, and as a result, today we are left with 56 regional rural banks. And the good news is that all the 56 regional rural banks are today profit making. And regional rural banks are contributing nearly 4 to 5% of the total business of the banking sector in India, and they are also catering to the local needs of the poor people, poor artisans and villages.